My name is Maria Clayton, and I am the Communication Director for the Department of Education, or for the California Department of Education. I'd like to welcome our panelists, members of the media, and all of you who are joining us today on Facebook Live. This event is part of an ongoing conversation about returning our students to in-person learning. And in just a moment, you'll hear from our State Superintendent of Public Instruction, as well as a number of special guests who will be talking about returning students to campuses and classrooms, with a focus not just on physical health, but also social and emotional well-being. But before we get to that, just a few logistical reminders. I'm going to ask our panelists to please limit their comments to just 2 minutes so we can get to the second part of our agenda, which is a Q&A session. For members of the media, I ask you to remember to use the raise hand function so that I can know that you have a question and I can call on you. And please take a moment to look in the Q&A section of the Zoom to make sure that you're identified as your name and your media outlet so I can be sure to identify and recognize you appropriately if you have a question. We're going to do our best to get to all the questions today, but we do have a hard stop at the top of the hour. So if you do have a question that didn't come through the meeting, please email us at communications@cde.ca.gov. And with that, let me now turn the mic over to our State Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Thank you, Maria, and greetings, everyone. Good day. Thank you for joining us, our partners in the media, those who are viewing on Facebook Live. Yes, as Maria has laid out, we have been engaged in an ongoing conversation about how to help schools get open for in-person instruction and to stay open safely following the science. You know that we've been talking a great deal about using rapid COVID tests that give results within 15 minutes. We're up to 300 school districts that we are now working with, that we were able to provide free rapid COVID tests to. We're grateful to our partnership with the Governor's Office, the Department of Public Health and Health and Human Services to be able to secure 5 million Binax rapid COVID tests. More on that later. Today, you're going to hear from great leaders in education, from those who know about ventilation. And to start things off, we also wanted to talk about our continuing efforts to combat hate, and in particular, hate against our Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. We continue to be heartbroken by some of the very devastating things that we have seen. And many of you know that we have been engaged for the last several months in a campaign on what we call education to end hate. And we provided trainings that address ways that districts can do more. We provided grants to school districts for professional development. But today we have a special opportunity to talk about a curriculum that focuses on civics and the contributions of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders that we believe is an important part of our conversation. And in just a few weeks, CDE will host its very next panel on education to end hate with a heavy focus on what our schools can do to counter bullying, to counter the false notions that have been offered by many, conflating the coronavirus with our Asian American Pacific Islander communities. It's just false, and we want to push back on that. And in a few weeks, we'll be hosting our next webinar. But today, I'm really pleased to introduce some partners who bring this curriculum to us. One who we know quite well, our Secretary of Labor in California, who's been a champion for working people and working conditions in our state, Secretary Julie Su, who I'm so excited has introduced us to this curriculum. And Stuart Kuo, who is most recently the Executive Director of Asian Americans Advancing Justice in Los Angeles. Asian Americans Advancing Justice has created the curriculum. And it is my honor to introduce Secretary Su to provide some remarks, followed by Stuart Kuo about the curriculum. Secretary Su, please take it away.
Superintendent Thurman, thank you so much for this and for your leadership all around. I wanted to come here mainly to actually share the work of Stuart and Pat Kuo, who are co-directors of the Asian American Education Project. It's a curriculum that's really over a decade in the making, but could not be more relevant or urgent now. It represents the diversity of Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. We're many ethnic groups with areas of common history and experience. And of course, as Superintendent Thurman, you mentioned, we are seeing some of how that commonality plays out now too. I think that you all know better than anybody, right, the importance of education in combating racism, in building our sense of common humanity, in understanding our American story, and this curriculum is very much a part of that. Just as one example, yesterday we celebrated Cesar Chavez Day in California, and one of the leaders that is taught in this curriculum is Filipino labor leader Larry Itliong, who helped to organize the Great Boycott. So I'm going to turn this over to Stuart Kuo to talk more about his incredibly path-breaking work on this.
Thank you very much, Julie, and thank you very much, Superintendent Thurman, for this opportunity. I'm with my wife, I'm a co-executive director of the Asian American Education Project. It actually is 14 years in development. We've worked with about 40 teachers and also partnered with UCLA, Stanford, and most recently Cal State LA to develop this curriculum. The good news is as of February, we finished 48 lesson plans. They're for free and they're on our new website, asianamericans.edu.org, asianamerikanedu.org. And we're going to start free trainings of teachers on April 11th. We'll have more information on the April 11th kickoff on our website in about a week, but asianamerikanedu.org. We're also, in addition to the 48 lessons, we're adding a lesson on the current anti-Asian hate to be most relevant. We've been contacted by groups from diverse as the AFT, the LAUSD, teachers are contacting us every day. There's a big hunger for the curriculum and the knowledge of how to understand the current anti-Asian hate. So we're willing to work with teachers and administrators on the history, the current hate, as well as how to deal with the harassment that too many students and teachers are facing as they go back to school. In some school districts, 2/3 of whites are going back to school. Only 1/3 of Asians are going back to school. And we've gotten calls from teachers who are being harassed by their students being called names. So we think the curriculum provides a historical context on multiracial democracy, on how different people of color in particular have worked together and the issues that they faced. We think that lessons on Wong Kim Ark on birthright citizenship is very interesting and timely. Japanese Americans incarcerated during World War II and Fort Korematsu. We have stories on Sikhs trying to get equality, the Filipinos working with Latinos and Chicanos to create the Farm Workers Union. And of course, Patsy Mink, who fought for Title IX, which gave some equality to women and girls in sports. And of course, Vincent Chin. So we are very poised to work with schools throughout the state. And we thank Superintendent Thurman for the opportunity. Our lesson plans are part of the model curriculum, but we can't wait for that to happen. So we have these lesson plans available for the teachers and the students and the administrators throughout the state of California right now. And we think the urgency is right now. So we're happy to work with you to promote this curriculum, and hopefully through our trainings, teachers will use it immediately. Thank you for the opportunity.
Sure, thank you. The timing is so important, as you've said. The urgency is right now. And we're grateful to you and your wife and others who've worked on these 48 lesson plans. And they are certainly right on time. I'm going to be asking Mary Nicely, who's my senior advisor, who is also on this Zoom. Good morning, Mary. She's helped us with a number of our efforts to strengthen our ethnic studies curriculum. I'll be asking her to connect with you, and then I anticipate that in the next week or so, we'd like to all meet and with our teams that work on curricula to dig in, learn more about these lesson plans, and to figure out how we get them in the hands of our educators across the state. And so thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Secretary Sue, for introducing us to this great opportunity. Thank you for all the great things you're doing for our state. And of course, we're eager to continue watching the great things that you will be doing for our nation. We're excited to celebrate you as a nominee to serve as the Deputy Secretary of Labor for the U.S. government. We stand by to support you once you take up your new assignment. But we thank you for always thinking about California and California students. Thank you. As we are concerned about AAPI hate, we also think about it through the lens of intersectionality, that there's no place for hate for anyone, any of our communities. And we started our Education to End Hate series after watching the killing of George Floyd. And we've continued to talk with students about ethnic studies, about them seeing representations of themselves that they don't typically get. And we have launched into conversation to make sure that there is no hate, and that education continues to be a tool for countering hate of any kind, whether it's racism, whether it's against immigrants, whether it's AAPI hate or Islamophobia, hate against our LGBTQ community, anti-Semitism. We stand for working against it. And we appreciate these new resources. Thank you again.
Thank you.
We want to continue the conversation today about examples to help our schools. This is hard work, getting open during a pandemic, watching the changing tiers. This is very difficult. And we have been so impressed. The districts that are represented today are not the only ones in the state. Big shout out to districts all across the state, many of whom have stayed open since the fall, all across the state, small districts, rural districts, urban districts. But we have 3 really great examples to share. And we're just so grateful. And I'd like to start with the Napa County Office of Education, followed by Napa Valley Unified School District. It has just been so impressive, your message, and it gave me hope. Really, it gives me hope. And I hope that it does for other districts. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Nemko, to start. And then when you're ready, please turn it over to Dr. Musetti. We look forward to hearing anything that you can share that you think is helpful for our districts as they try to get reopened and stay open safely.
Thank you, Superintendent Thurmond. So the first part, which I think we have all done a really good job, is not rocket science, but it is critical. And that's following all of the mitigations that we have been told are really important. So of course, everybody was wearing masks, and we've changed the MERV filters, and we've scrubbed and cleaned, and we hired extra people, and we've tested and brought in portable sinks in classrooms that don't have them. So all of the physical things in the schools we took care of. And I think most districts have done a great job. So you're going to hear from Dr. Musetti in a moment about Napa Valley Unified, but I'd also like to share the story of the St. Helena Unified School District, led by Dr. Mary Lou Wilson. When she came back in the fall, she started off with simultaneous instruction, like many people did, brought in cameras. So teachers were teaching to the students in front of them, as well as teaching to the students at home. Dr. Wilson has had a practice of doing voluntary feedback meetings at all of her schools. She has 4 schools, 1,200 kids. And so she went around after a couple of weeks and talked to each of the schools about what was going well and what doesn't. Teachers were very unhappy with the simultaneous instruction because it's quite difficult to be talking to kids in front of you, but standing in a small space, not being able to move around because you're talking to a camera. They also reported that the kids who were in person were engaged and excited and really doing well, but the kids who were at home came in their pajamas, they were eating breakfast, they were absolutely not engaged. So she put together a committee about how we were going to get more kids back. And they developed a policy that said if a student was at home because of a medical reason, or in Napa County, we had to consider they had lost their home due to a fire, which we did have again this fall, then they could continue the simultaneous Zooming in. But for everyone else, they either were going to come back to school or they could use an online system. So for the TK through grade 8, it was fuel education. And for the high school, it was independent study with Apex credit recovery. And amazingly, 95% of the students came back. And she said, there were some people who criticized that and they said that's not the right thing to do. But she said, if you know who you are and you believe strongly that kids are better off in school, then you need to do everything you can to get them back. And of course, she reports to the community. She does a video every week. And I think that's another lesson, that we send updates to our parents, but they don't always want to read a long thing. But a video that takes a minute and a half, people are very willing to listen to. So she sent that video home, explained her reasoning, and had a dashboard on the website, as many districts do, that showed that there was not any transmission coming from the schools. In fact, there were lower cases in kids who were in person than there were from kids who were at home. And so now they're up to 98% of kids back in school, which I think has lessons for all of us. And now to hear about what Napa Valley Unified has done, Dr. Rosanna Musetti.
So I'll be quick. Thank you again, Superintendent Thurman, for having Napa Valley Unified here today. Napa Valley Unified School District, just really quickly, we're a district of 17,000. We're the largest school district in Napa County. And we've been at this work for 7 months. We opened all 28 of our campuses simultaneously on October the 26th. So we've been doing hybrid instruction for 7 months, and we're really proud about the fact that we were able to figure out the way, particularly at the secondary level. We know a lot of districts are sort of starting to open up and phase in for elementary, but through collaborative efforts with our union, strong adherence to the mitigation strategies, we were able to do a district-wide opening, including our large 3 comprehensive high schools of a couple thousand students. We did exercise simultaneous teaching in grades 6 through 12. The way we did this is through innovative technologies in our classroom, and I won't go into the details of that because I know we're limited on time. But I think what I'm most excited to report is that we were doing this work pre the vaccine distribution. And if you go on our website, you'll see our COVID-19 tracker. Unlike St. Helena, we're in a predicament where many school districts are in, where only 40% of our students wanted to come back of the 17,000. And so you have the complexity there, and you have to use the hybrid instruction in order to be able to do high quality, robust distance learning while starting to bring the students back for in-person. And so we did that through the technology integration and through the keeping low density in our campuses. Our students come to school 4 days a week, the in-person students, and they come in AM, PM cohorts. So initially it was 2 days a week to test our operational systems back in October, early on when we were kind of in the midst of just going into the surge, and then shifted once things got better in terms of the public health landscape, shifted to 4 days a week. And our biggest pride, like I was going to say, is that if you look at our tracker, we have had close to zero transmission of COVID on our campuses. There has been COVID during the 7-month period. We've never had to close a school. We have had to close some cohorts, but the transmission was really outside of the school environment. So I'm here to kind of speak as your Northern California proof point that if you adhere to the mitigation strategies, kindergarten, TK through 12th grade, your students can be safe, your staff can be safe. And we've been able to provide that in-person instruction since October through all of those strategies. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our success.
That's amazing, Superintendent. Thank you for that. I love hearing you emphasize the importance of following the mitigations and how it absolutely can work if we do that. Superintendent Musetti, thank you. Superintendent Nemko, thank you for lifting up the county's experience and some of your other districts. We like to offer similar experiences from our partners at Long Beach Unified School District. We're pleased to have Superintendent Dr. Jill Baker here today. Long Beach Unified is recognized as probably one of the largest districts in the state, if not the largest district in the state, that has found a way to reopen safely for in-person instruction. Please take it away, Dr. Baker.
Thank you, Superintendent Thurman. Well, it's been a great week in Long Beach Unified School District. We have welcomed back 14,000 TK through fifth grade students across 54 campuses and have been just so pleased with all of the planning that went into getting up to this week. As has been shared, I had a number of conversations in schools where principals and teachers reflected on how much planning went into the 15 minutes of arrival, where students are coming up with their families, going through the screening process, getting their hand sanitizer, hours spent on those 15 minutes. And once students were in classrooms, we saw the magic happen. Teachers just warmly interacting with students, reacclimating them to the classroom setting. And I think what was really special about this is relationships had been built, even though they had been built across a screen for distance learning. So there was a comfort of students coming in with their teachers, and frankly, they got right to work, but in a really genuinely focus on well-being and focusing on getting back into the routines of classroom work to be ready to move forward. And so super excited that we will welcome back our secondary students after next week's spring break, and looking forward to having them as well.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. And again, we're reminding the media, if there are questions for any of our school district folks, we will be available, and they will be available. Fantastic stuff, 14,000 students, really impressive. Again, and back to Dr. Nemko, thank you for working with us to create some guidance that school districts can use to help them answer questions that they still have. I really appreciate you helping us there. We want to segue to one of the topics that has come up about from the president, from President Biden, and from others about how to help keep schools safe. And the federal government has made money available to address ventilation. As I've learned it in my shorthand, just getting fresh air into a classroom can do wonders for preventing and helping to mitigate the spread of the coronavirus. With us today, we have an industry expert in Chris Rook, who can talk to us about some of the very particulars that districts can think about. And we've been sharing that the state has, through AB 841, created resources that school districts can use to upgrade their ventilation and HVAC systems. But here to provide us an overview of what schools might think about and what benefits they might experience is Chris Rook. Take it away, Chris.
Great, thank you for the time. My name is Christopher Rook with the National Energy Management Institute. The CDC recently updated their recommendations, and they clarified that ventilation is a component of strategies to maintain healthy buildings. Now, the U.S. Department of Education, of course, is immediately working to update their documents to match that. And they're recommending conducting assessments and audits of existing ventilation systems, right? Making sure that your existing ventilation system that taxpayers have already paid for function, and developing a ventilation improvement plan. Well, as was mentioned, California is ahead of the game on this, meaning that with AB 841, they have a plan in place. And that plan that's under AB 841 can be carried over to federal grants or the other funds that are coming through. The first part of that is doing an assessment of your existing ventilation system, following the components here. This follows a white paper that was published by both NEMI in coordination with UC Davis that really takes the ASHRAE guidelines and CDC guidelines and tries to put them into a very logical way that you'll do in the field. Once you've performed a physical assessment of your system, then you hand it over to a licensed professional. That licensed professional can now have a lot of reduced assumptions. You can figure out the most efficient way to work with the school district to make solutions. And as we've learned from previous reports, of course, then it's the important part is making sure that that system is not only fixed, maintained, and installed by technicians that know what they're doing, skilled, trained, and certified workforce. And with that, I'll leave it. Thank you.
Chris, thank you. Sorry about calling you Rook. It's Chris Rook. Thank you. And we're really glad, though, that you were really clear in sharing with us what the benefits can be for schools. And we want to see if anyone in the media has any questions for you or for any of our partners about the great things that we're sharing with our schools. Maria, I'll turn it back to you to help us navigate that portion of the discussion.
All right, thank you. And thank you to all of our panelists today and sharing all of your insights. While the members of the media take a moment and use the raise hand function if there's any questions, I'm wondering, Superintendent Thurman, if you want to speak a little bit about what you talked about on a meeting a couple of weeks ago on the rapid COVID testing and how that is assisting many of our schools in returning students to campuses.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. I would just say for those school districts that haven't heard it, we just think that using programs like the rapid COVID testing are so critical to have awareness. We want people to be able to have the kind of results that Dr. Musetti talked about, really being able to minimize the spread of COVID on campuses. And one way that we think that can be benefited and aided is the use of rapid COVID testing. There are various forms of rapid COVID tests, these antigen tests as they're called. We are grateful that we're working with one provided by Abbott. 5 million tests have been secured, and we are working with school districts to be able to use them. Quite frankly, they provide the results within 15 minutes. And so it's just very impressive that you can know within 15 minutes someone may be positive and asymptomatic for COVID. And then that way we can quickly help to move that person into quarantine while keeping the rest of the school community safe. And so it's a great resource. We're excited to be working with districts on it. And we'll continue to talk about the training that comes with it and how the tracking happens. It really has a great platform to support contact tracing. And so we want to continue to do all that we can while we're waiting for more vaccines and while we're waiting to see our communities open up in tiers where there is less and less of COVID rate infection.
Okay, we do have one question right now from Diana Lambert at EdSource. So I'm going to go ahead and open up her mic.
Hello, Superintendent.
Hi, Diana. How are you?
Good. So I have a question about student vaccinations. How do you think the decision to extend COVID-19 vaccination eligibility to residents as young as 16 and Pfizer's recent announcement that its vaccine is effective in children as young as 12 will impact school reopening?
As you asked that question, thank you for the question. Today is the day that the new state guidelines allow for vaccines to be provided to anyone who is 50 and older. And then April 15th, those guidelines will shift to focus on those who are 16 and older. Again, I just think this is a game changer and I think a great opportunity for advancing the reopening of our schools for in-person instruction. I guess we have to wait and see what the interest rate will be and the uptake will be as parents will make decisions about it. But it just seems to be one more resource to aid in the reopening of our schools for in-person instruction.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, it looks like we don't have any other questions right now. We are past the 10 o'clock hour. So I think we could probably wrap up. I want to thank all of our panelists for spending your time this morning on this important conversation. I also want to thank those of you who joined us on Facebook Live today. And I want to give a shout out to the CDE team who work behind the scenes to make these meetings possible, especially the tech team. We are thankful that you could all be here to join us for this important conversation, which will continue in the weeks and months to come. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Maria. And thank you to all of our panelists and for helping us continue the conversation with our schools about how to get open for in-person instruction, how to stay open for in-person instruction, and most importantly, how to stay safe. And to all of you, continue to be safe and well until next time. Thank you.
Thank you.